Brought to you by the Minority Media Association and the Broadcasting Club at UWM, celebrating diversity in your area.
Bringing my community to you.
Identifying issues that are important to everyone. Embracing individuality.
Welcome to the U-View.
Hello and welcome to U-View, presented by the Broadcast Club and the Minority Media Association, or MMA, at UWM.
I'm Brittney Adekola, President of Minority Media Association.
And I'm Sapphire Cancer, a member of the Minority Media Association. Today with us we have author Shauna Singh Baldwin, here to discuss her different challenges growing up, her experiences as an author, her experience as a student at Marquette. Brittney, would you like to take it from here?
Sure. What brought you to Milwaukee?
What brought me to Milwaukee, I was coming back to North America, and I was born in Canada, and so I thought I would go back to Canada to study, do my master's in Canada. But Canada doesn't accept degrees from overseas. It only accepts degrees from people who've worked in Canada and done their undergraduate in Canada to go for a master's. So I applied to American universities, and 2 American universities accepted me. And I started down south in the College of William and Mary. And unfortunately, I couldn't understand the accents of the professors over there. And so pretty soon I moved up to Marquette, and they accepted the transfer of credits. And so I completed my master's in Milwaukee at Marquette, and then went back to Canada for a couple of years.
Did it feel good to go back to Canada after getting that degree,
yes,
knowing that
did.
Initially you couldn't, they wouldn't accept it? And once you finally got it, did it feel good just to be like, you know what, I got the degree now,
That's
I'm
right.
back.
I'm back, and you can't keep me out.
You can't keep me out.
That's right. And I think, when you're born in a place, you want to make sure that you know how to live there. And for me, that was very important, to go back to Canada and to spend time there and to learn how to live there. But in the meanwhile, I had, there was this Irishman with the blue eyes and everything, and he lives in Milwaukee, and he was geographically undesirable in those days. This was before the net, you see. And so eventually I moved back to Milwaukee, and we got married. And that was 27 years ago.
And so you've been here since?
Yes, I've been here since, but with many forays to Canada. Because it's so close to the border. And what happens is that we in Wisconsin forget just how close it is. But when I got married, the border didn't mean very much. It's only since 9/11 that the border has become this big border in our minds as well. So for me, getting married and moving to Wisconsin was not a big deal in those days. But today, I think it's such a huge border of the mind that when you say that you're from Canada and you're married in Wisconsin, everybody goes, oh, that must be really difficult. Yeah, it's the 3 hours at the airport that make it difficult.
Mm-hmm. When you say border in the mind, do you mean, is it more just like a self-inflicted kind of border that we're placing on ourselves rather than the actual geographical borders? I mean, obviously it's easy to travel.
One, yeah.
But,
no, there is one, but it's been the largest unguarded border in the world, for a century or more. And recently, since 9/11, of course, that is not the case. There's a no man's land on either side. The Red Cross has camps at certain points to stop people. So it is not a border that is unguarded anymore. And so it's also become a border of the mind. And you ask most people in the United States about Canada, and they think it's a big black hole that's north of the border. Well, it's a very wonderful, thriving, amazing country that's north of the border with a lot of culture. And so if we would take advantage of those historical links between the two, I think we'd have less of a border of the mind.
Okay. Well, it looks like outside of just being from Canada and getting a degree here and going back there, that you've also done some writing, an extensive amount of writing.
Right.
Would you like to tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. I grew up in India. I'm second generation. My parents are the ones who emigrated to North America. My dad went to UW-Madison to do his MBA, went back to India and got married to my mother, and then they both emigrated to Canada. And so I was born over there, and then after 1967, 68, things were really going crazy in North America. It was a time of a great upheaval, not only from a civil rights perspective, but also from the standpoint that old values were shifting, and all the things that people aspired to as values of the West were suddenly under question. So that was a time when my parents decided to go back to India, and I grew up in India for 10 years and learned the languages, which was very helpful. And when I came back over here, I realized that people in North America were clueless where it came to people from the East. And that's what first got me writing. My first book was A Foreign Visitor's Survival Guide to America, because a book like that had not been written since 1937. People, although the United States consists of immigrants from countries all over the world, no one had thought to help them out since 1937. They're really not welcome in the true sense of the word unless somebody actually makes some effort to welcome you. So that's one of the reasons why I did the Foreign Visitor's Survival Guide to America. That is for people who are, English speaking, but culturally different from people in the United States. And it is the United States that's different from the rest of the world, and this is something that Americans really don't get. I mean, they think they're the norm.
That's true.
And that's not the case, of course. So a lot of my writing has been to explore those areas and say, it's the rest of the world that you need to get to understand. So when I was writing English Lessons and Other Stories, that's a book that's set in my three countries, India, Canada, and the USA. And it's talking about women and their stories. And in the 90s, when it came out, it was published in 1996, but it was written between 92 and 96. It was still a very radical idea to suggest that women had stories. Usually, women were adjuncts to men's stories. They were the sidekicks. And so the idea of actually having women's stories in one book was a difficult sell. First of all, even within the United States. I think I was turned down by about 30 publishers for English lessons. And then a publisher in Canada said, yes, we would really like to publish. Going back to those Canadians.
Going back to the Canadian roots there.
That's right. And so it was published in Canada and still is. And it's the little book that could, because it's been reissued now with a reader's guide after 12, 13 years. So it keeps going. And from there, I kind of wanted to expand a little bit, and I really thought about the idea of how minorities are treated in the different countries that I belong to. And I mean this on a very mass level rather than individually, because my grandparents, my maternal grandparents, actually fled the formation of India and Pakistan. They were a minority between the two countries when India and Pakistan formed, and a line was drawn by an Englishman dividing the country in two. And so, at that point, my family were Sikhs, and so they were caught in the middle. They were not Muslims, they were not Hindus. The country was being divided on the basis of Islam and Hinduism. Mm-hmm. And so they had to find a spot. So so what I was exploring in that book was how my maternal grandparents came out of Pakistan and fled the formation of Pakistan, went to India, and on the other side, people in India were throwing out the minority in India, which was the Muslims. So Muslims and Hindus were passing each other on the road as the population shifted. And that, to give you an idea of this, if you consider that 1 million people were displaced when New Orleans went through the floods, 1 million people were displaced. Well, consider that 17 million people were displaced in their own country by the partition of India. So 17 million people were crossing that border and moving and on the move, trying to get someplace. They didn't even know where home was. So they all became refugees in their own country, and this is what The Body Remembers is written about. It is that deep internal collective memory that was coming through me, really, and saying, you need to write this story. You need to tell it from the point of view of the women who experienced it, because the tale has been told over the last 50 years, over the 50 years since independence. It has been told by men, but we have never talked to the women. We have never asked the women how they experienced it, and they experienced it, of course, very differently. And so that's what The Body Remembers is about. It's a story of two women. They're in a polygamous marriage in colonial India. And at the end of the book, the partition hits all of the characters, and they all deal with it differently. So, you know, I just want to point out that minority mass situations may be directed against one minority, but you deal with it as an individual.
Right.
So that's what that book is about. Now, coming to the Tiger Claw, it was during the writing of What the Body Remembers that I learned the story of Noor Inayat Khan. And Noor Inayat Khan was a Muslim woman who, during World War II, became a radio operator, and she was landed into wartime France, and she spied for the British. Now, this was a very strange thing, because as I was explaining to you, the British ruled India. They are the ones responsible for the partition of India, and the mayhem that took place, you know, in 1947. But leading up to that is the whole struggle for independence, and here's a Muslim woman who decides to work for the British as a spy. Now, what could possibly be her motivation? And so in the course of researching this, I discovered a love story, and it was a love story between this Muslim woman, Noor Inayat Khan, a real woman, and a Jewish man. And their love story gave her the bravery, really, to go into wartime France, to brave a whole world war. And what she does in the book, and how she faces the Nazis and the Aryan supremacists of her time, should give us a lot of inspiration in our time. So that was The Tiger Claw.
Wow, that sounds extremely interesting. Brittney, did you have a question?
Yeah, so going to one of your other books, The Selector of Souls, what was like the most challenging part for you?
Well, The Selector of Souls came about after We Are Not in Pakistan, and We Are Not in Pakistan was published in 2007, and those were short stories. And short stories for me are a place of experimentation, where you can try different styles, different voices, different ideas, and you can see how they work out. And I set those stories in many different parts of the world. But eventually, I came back to writing about India, because the issue that really hit me when I was working on We Are Not in Pakistan is the problem of discrimination against women. And the discrimination against women was learned to be so bad that in the year 2000, when the census was done in India, they found out that over time they were missing 160 million girls from the world. From the 70s to now, we are missing 160 million girls. And in India alone, 3.1 million have gone missing in the 90s. Now, how did that happen? Well, what's happening is selective abortion of women. And this is not just saying, oh, we don't like girls, they're too expensive, we don't have Social Security, we need to be maintained in our old age, you know, by our children. This is also saying, I have son preference. I prefer sons. And so people all over the world, not just in India, are choosing boys over girls. And with the influence of reproductive technologies and ultrasound, which, by the way, is from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, with the influence of these new medical technologies and reproductive technologies, IVF, PGD, all of those things, it is much easier to select in the embryo stage or select during the pregnancy for whether it's a boy or a girl. decided I was going to write a book that showed the economics of this and how it impacts people in real life. Because it's women who are doing these abortions on other women. Now, you must hate yourself terribly. You must devalue yourself terribly to feel that you're not even of value enough in the world to bring another girl into it. Okay? So what's happening? And we need to find that out. And we need to find it out as a world problem, because if you keep getting rid of girls, you also mean that you're going to keep having more boys. You're going to have more masculine values in the society. And what are those masculine values? Those masculine values are competition, are dominance, power plays. Those masculine values traditionally have been leading us to war. Now, the two countries in which these are happening, and in the book also, these are happening in a country that is nuclearized. So we are heading in a very masculinized society towards a country that is facing another nuclear power over a line of control that no one is monitoring. So.
And just kind of digressing a little bit, you mentioned during partition that a lot of people didn't know where their home was.
Right.
Where is home from you, being that you're from India and you've lived in Canada and you've been in Milwaukee? Is home in all three places, or, I mean, is there somewhere that feels more like home than the other place?
Well, home is where the people I love exist, okay? And for me, I witness wherever I am. And so home is where I am, where I physically happen to be. And now with the net, home can be all over the world. So I used to, have a lot of angst about that issue. Oh dear, am I American? Am I Canadian? Am I Indian? I don't worry about it anymore. I just go, I'm an individual. I have been put on this planet for some reason to witness and to show my point of view and to express that so that somebody else changes their point of view. Because there's no point writing all these books if you come away from these books and you go, oh, darn, she's really explained the world the way it is, No, that's not the point. The point is, can we break the patterns that we've set up in life to be more comfortable with each other, to understand each other's faiths, for example. Each book, in my case right now, each book has a different religion in conflict with each other. So whether it's Hinduism versus Sikhism, whether it's Sikhism versus Islam and Hinduism in What the Body Remembers, in the Selector of Souls, it's Sikhism and it's Sikhism, Hinduism, and Christianity. The people don't understand each other. In the Tiger Claw, it's Islam and Judaism and Christianity. So in all of these things, we have to take religion into account also, because it affects how we think about our actions and what we think is going to happen to us after we die.
Right.
So that's one of the reasons why I am very interested in how people think about themselves and their spirituality as part of life.
All right, we're going to take a short break, but we'll be right back with Shauna Singh Baldwin.
This is where powerful ideas lead to proven results. This is where you belong.
Welcome back. We are here still with Shauna here. We have a couple more questions for you that we want to ask about your books and just more questions about your life and personal experiences. I'm going to dive right in and ask you, when the Sikh shootings happened not too long ago, how did that personally affect you? Or what was your reaction?
Yeah, I was on my way to the temple when the shooting happened, and we saw it on TV, and my husband stopped me. I was putting on my bangles and my earrings and everything, and he says, well, wait a minute, there seems to be something on TV. He got a call, I think, from a friend of his in Oak Creek, and we watched, and we said, what is going on? And then the two of us jumped in my car, and we went there. And as I went through, the police stopped and said, you know, you can't go over there. And I said, I'm a Red Cross translator. I have to get in there. Well, I hadn't translated for the Red Cross in, I don't know, 20 years. But I had my card. And they let me in, and that's all we cared about. And we sat opposite the Gurdwara for 5 hours waiting for news with other families, just being there for each other, all of us, you know. And my husband, David, does not, you know, attend the Gurdwara. He's a Catholic, very lapsed Catholic, and I'm not a very good Sikh either, you know. But the important thing was to be there for people who were waiting for loved ones, who were who couldn't figure out what had happened even. We didn't know if there was 1, 2, 3, or 4 shooters, for example. And then people around the Gurdwara didn't know if there were shooters behind the Gurdwara. And why would they have targeted us? I mean, to us, this was the question, what had we done wrong? You know, what was the big deal? But you can't even ask that question, because since 9/11, we all know the answer, right? What had we done wrong? We don't look like everybody else, and we don't act like everybody else, and we don't worship the way everybody else worships, and that is a sin in itself. But at the same time, we are Americans, and that's what we're here for. We're here to be individuals, here to pursue happiness like everybody else, and it is the American thing to do, whether some neo-Nazi likes it or not, you know. So we were very sure, as we waited for news, that whether people were dead or hostage inside that building, we were there for each other, but we were also going to be supported by the larger community. We had faith in Americans, and I have to say that that faith was played out in the next few days. I've never seen such an outpouring from the most wonderful people of Oak Creek, the mayor of Oak Creek, the police chief, the fire chief. I mean, the authorities did the very best they could. What we could not prevent, of course, was some neo-Nazi person with a well-developed sense of entitlement who just felt that, you know, his entitlement was being threatened by our very presence. So I also should mention that that particular Gurdwara was built into through an alley and into an opening and behind the road, so that it was not visible from the road. And it was done that way because at a certain point we had tried to build a Sikh Gurdwara in Mequon, and they didn't want one in Mequon, so we went to Oak Creek, and the Oak Creek village body said, all right, provided it's built way back where nobody can see the dome. So we faced this before the Gurdwara was even built. And then we were happy the Gurdwara was built, and, you know, everybody worshipped over there, and we thought we were safe because we weren't visible. But it is not enough to be invisible. You have to be visible. You have to, I think, come out and do more outreach. And that's what we've learned from the whole incident. It may have been the most devastating incident we've ever experienced, but it has galvanized us into coming out and telling people who we are. We're not a proselytizing religion. We're not evangelical. We don't go out and say, this is the only way you can get to heaven. We say, come and worship with us if you'd like to. And on Sundays, we have free Indian food served. It's fantastic food. Come and eat with us. And so what we've been doing is trying to extend that invitation further and further. But we never proselytize. We never, you know, push our religion on anybody else. So that's part of our whole, you know, conundrum since this thing happened, that we want people to know about us, but we're not like the Amish or somebody like that, you know, where we want to keep to ourselves. We're saying everybody come in and eat with us. But we also say that men and women are equal, and that's unlike the Amish too. So we've been sort of classed with the Amish as people who are different. No, that's not the case. We're very much like other people. We have the same aspirations, to be left alone, for example, not to be shot at, all those things. And yet we need to educate people about what is a Sikh, that we do follow 10 gurus, that we have a holy book, that we meet together, and our 3 commandments are work hard and share with your neighbor and take the name of the Lord. Is that so very difficult?
No.
That was a devastating time. Has it changed your views on society at all?
Yeah, it was a devastating time, but it was not unexpected. Unfortunately, I wish that I could say it was totally a shock from the blues, but I've been writing about these things for the last 20 years. So for me, I'm afraid I wish I hadn't been writing about it in that sense, because maybe I would have been more innocent about it. But I do think that my faith in my fellow Wisconsinites and the world at large was really strengthened from the incident, because although there might be one Michael Page who did that shooting, there are thousands and thousands of wonderful people who said, no, that is not us, and we're not allowing this in our community. And we feel for you. And the moment I say I'm a Sikh, I get one of 2 reactions. What's that? Still? Okay, I cannot believe that you could still have that reaction since August to now. What's that is the first reaction. The other reaction is, oh, I'm so sorry what happened to you. And you know, I think that just sensitizing people around here that there are other faiths other than the Abrahamic faiths. There are you know, the Muslim, the Jewish, and the Christian faith, but there are other faiths even in Wisconsin, you know, and even sensitizing people to that has been a positive thing.
Wow, that was a lot. So since that's happened, have you noticed the community just coming together and being a lot stronger, and have you played any active role in really strengthening everyone within that Oak Creek, or even just in the religion in general, you know? Strengthening people, and really, obviously, part of your work is to be more of an individual, as we were talking during the break, to less identify with a religion or with a country that you're from, but to be more of an individual. How do you...
But this also pushes you back towards the community, right? Because I am bilingual, trilingual. I mean, I speak 4 languages. I should be able to communicate better with people and give that help that the community needs. There are people who are monolingual, speaking English only in our community now because they're second generation. So the first thing that happens in American life is, please forget the language of your fathers, you see. So we're trying to bring that back, because we have this intergenerational gap that also has to be bridged for the children. And then in addition, we have a situation where you don't want to circle the wagons. You want to open up to the rest of the world. And yet if you don't circle the wagons and there's another Michael Page hanging around the corner, you're not trying to open the door to them. And unfortunately, listening to conservative radio, as I do now since the shooting, I am appalled by the virulence of the hatred that is still out there. And it's not enough to have a black president. He actually embodies, for people who are on this neo-Nazi trip, he actually embodies everything that they fear. And so I think many of us are the same. We are so foreign, we are so different, that we embody something really strange. Well, you know, at heart, we all have 2 eyes, we all have a heart, we all have the same aspirations, and eventually, when my blood goes into your body in a transfusion, it's the same blood.
Now, in an interview with Anjana Rajan, you state, in all my books, in asking the question, what do you do when no one is watching? Why did you choose this question as a staple for your books?
I think we are very determined by how other people see us, you know? As a child, you look around for approval, you say, who do I belong to? Who's my mommy, who's my daddy, you know? And then modern life in the United States, you feel very abandoned if your parents are divorcing or something, you know. And you have this attitude that I must belong to somebody. I must seek approval. So what will people say is the first question that your parents say to you when they correct you. You know, they say, don't do that. What will people say? And you internalize this. Well, the question is not what will people say, but what will I say to myself when I look in the mirror? That's another question. So you know what you are only by asking the question, who am I if no one is watching? And that was very obvious to me when I was writing particularly What the Body Remembers, because under conditions of mob anonymity, people can do the most horrible things. When they're in a group, when students are in a group, when students are in a gang, when somebody has the same tattoos as everybody else in the neo-Nazi group, they can do whatever they feel like because no one knows their name. And the mayhem that happened in 1947 for the partition was the same way. So I keep asking that question, what are you capable of if no one is watching? It was the first question I asked myself as an immigrant coming back to North America without my parents. Okay, or what you would ask going out into the world after your degree.
Okay, well, after this interview and having the time to sit here, I think we can all say you are, or we can kind of say, obviously you're an amazing author with great insight. You're doing a great job with, you know, really helping to have people understand more about different religions, and we really do appreciate you coming out today.
Unfortunately, that's all we have time for, but we appreciate you coming out.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for
having
us.
me.
Thank you.
Brittney Adekola from UView, the president, and
I'm Sapphire Cancer, a member of MMA. Thank you all so much for joining us today.